Welcome. In today's video, we're diving into one of the most powerful tools for student growth and academic achievement. It's called quality academic feedback. Whether you're a teacher candidate, or someone who supports learning in any setting, understanding how to give and how to use effective feedback can make a huge difference. So, what is quality academic feedback? Why does it matter so much? And how can you use it to help students move forward in their learning? Well, let's explore. We're going to dive into quality academic feedback. You're going to receive some resources that you'll be able to use, and then I'll provide an example of what that looks like in the real world. So, looking at quality academic feedback from an educational definition standpoint. Leading researcher John Hattie describes feedback as one of the most powerful influences on learning and achievement. According to Hattie, he defines effective feedback as crucial for learning and achievement, emphasizing its role in reducing discrepancies between current performance and desired goals. Effective feedback, according to Hattie and Temperley 2007, it says it should be clear, actionable, and focused on helping students understand where they are going, how they are progressing, and what steps to take next. It should also be tailored to the specific task, the process used to complete the task, and the learner's self-regulation skills rather than being solely focused on personality or general praise. Now let's look at the candidate-friendly definition for quality academic feedback. According to, based on a candidate-friendly definition, it's quality academic feedback is one of the most important things simply that will help students learn and succeed. It works best when it helps students to see the difference between how they're doing now and where they need to be. It should also match the task the student is working on, the way they're working on it, and how well they can manage their own learning. It should focus on the work, not on the student's personality or just saying, good job. So remember these three things. Remember, you're looking at where they're going. That means what is the goal? You're looking at how they're doing. How close are they to reaching that goal? And then third, what to do next? How can they get there? We'll jump into a few research-based resources that you will be able to use as a teacher candidate and as a teacher to help you as you work through this process of providing quality academic feedback to your students. So let's look at this first chart here. It's the Education Professions Quality Academic Feedback chart. And the focus is for us to look at um, making sure that we're focused. This tool is going to be helpful to help us stay focused and to connect us to the students' learning, not their personality. And looking at this, it should be number one, starting off with being goal reference. That means that you should be tied to the clear learning target. Looking at help making sure the students are allowed to self-assess their progress and guides the adjustments towards the goal. Now we're moving into number two, tangible and transparent. And based on these, the characteristics of being tangible and transparent is based on the visible results, easy to understand and interpret, and reveals what is or isn't working. Also making sure, number three, that your feedback is actionable, being very specific and with clear next steps, focusing on the observed behavior and highlighting what to improve or what they may need to repeat. And then fourth, making sure that it is user friendly. It must be simple, clear. Here we go with the word focused again, matches the student level and need, and avoids overload or technical terms. So breaking it down and making it easy for the student to understand and be able to comprehend and be able to understand what they need to do to move forward. Making sure, looking at number five, that it's timely, making sure you deliver that academic feedback very close to the performance. So when that student actually completes it, whether it be an assignment, whether it be an assessment, or they're working in groups. Give them that feedback, being very deliberate, being very timely, making it relevant and fresh for the learner, and also uses peers or tech for quicker feedback. Number six, making sure the academic quality academic feedback is ongoing. It's built into multiple practice opportunities, and it encourages revisions and retrying, and it supports continuous learning growth. And then finally, being consistent based on the shared rubric and criteria, making sure that your rubric is shared with the students. They understand what the rubric is. You model what that should look like. They understand the criteria, being clear and stable with your expectations, and then train students for reliable feedback. So, looking at this, we have a chart here that has the 7 qualities of having an quality academic feedback. Another resource that you will be able to use as you process this learning is called the Matrix of Feedback for Learning. And you'll see that it was created and the file is located underneath where you can find more in-depth reading. If you click on that link, you'll see an actual article based on how this matrix is used and the purpose of it, and how that you can implement this in your own practice. So looking at this matrix as you work through providing feedback for students, determining whether or not what stages the learner is in. Is this learner being in a novice stage, just beginning, they're proficient and advanced, and knowing what feeding up, feeding back, and feeding forward means. Feeding up means where am I going, right? And then when you look at things that you can do, prompts that you can use to help guide students when learning a task, what do they need to do? For example, in the feeding up, where am I going? You're going to share things like, what are you doing today? Talk about what the learning is. What are the success criteria? What are we looking for? That's feeding up prompts. And then strategies. What can you do to help improve that students are able to understand where they're going after you've delivered the message and inform them of what the next steps or where they're actually expected to go. So, for example, using exemplars and modeling. Modeling is key in this area. Identifying any misconceptions, checking for understanding, making sure students understand what the criteria is, what the goal is, what the objectives are for that particular task, and then moving into feeding back. How am I going to get there? Looking at asking questions. You have it? Do you have it? Are you sure? What are the intentions? Um, Again, looking at the success criteria. Again, checking for understanding, avoiding any overemphasis or errors of analysis. And then finally, feeding forward. What do I have to do next? So those are the things that you will check to make sure that the student fully understands the intention of the task, address any questions that they may have, any misconceptions that they may have, of adding or removing anything that would help them to improve their work. Use some scaffolding. These are some strategies you can use. Refer to the goals. Focus, feed them forward, must be timely, and it must be challenging. So you will use this matrix as a way to help guide you into having these conversations, these when you're doing do nows, having these opportunities to have conversations with your students when they're put in groups, or you can go around and use this tool to make sure that you're guiding the conversations as students work in groups, so they're staying on task, they're following through with the processes, and they're also doing what is called self-regulating, making sure that they understand they're working together, they're checking in with each other. You're asking these questions. There's some prompt questions that you can use, like, how do you know this? Are you on track with your work? Are you on track with achieving your goal? And having students be able to explain their why. Like, I know this because, and then show evidence to support that. So using this matrix is a great tool to help guide you when you're prepping your lesson plans, you're planning your planning support document. What are some things that you're going to look for when you're working on the activity with your students, and then whether you're doing small group, individual activities. These are some things that you can use to help guide you, providing feedback as students work towards reaching their academic goal. The next slide, what you'll see here is called quality academic feedback. Here are strategies to help students learn to use feedback. So this is a great tool to when you're putting students in groups, developing and coordinating and having students work in collaborative groups. These are some strategies that you can use to help students, to show them and model what does that look like, so that when they get into groups, it'll become automatic for them. Such things as model giving and using feedback yourself. So if students actually see you as the teacher of record or the candidate actually providing those verbal feedbacks to individual students, then they will mimic that. So you have to basically show them and tell them, and you do what, like, I'm going to show you what that looks like, my thought processing, and when I'm actually giving that feedback. Teach students where feedback comes from. It comes from the work, not necessarily, not the personality, not the person, keeping the feedback focused on the actual work that the student is providing. Teach students how to self and peer assessment, do the peer and self assessment skills. Okay. Explain to students why an assignment is given. When you're modeling all this, they will eventually, you have to explain to them, I'm going to show you what it looks like. I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to model, and then you'll have them practice. Use clear rubrics. Have students develop their own rubrics and be able to translate those in a kid-friendly language. And just provide opportunities for students to redo complex assignments. It's okay that you might give them an assignment and not all students did really well. It's okay for them to redo that, because what happens is they're able to work in teams if possible, or partner and help guide each other. That's a perfect way for them to actually be able to practice that academic, providing academic quality academic feedback with each other when you're giving them opportunity to redo a complex assignment, or just simply work in groups. So here are some strategies that will help you to help guide students to learn how to give quality feedback when they're working in peers, with peers, or when they're working in groups. The next slide is actually a guide to ground rules that can help you when you're providing students those opportunities to practice peer or group academic feedback. Here's some rules, some ground rules that you want to put in place, and then you want to not only just um, have these ground rules posted, you must model these ground rules. You must allow students to practice these rules, such as read your peers' work carefully. What does that look like? Demonstrate what that looks like. Compare the work with the rubric. I actually model with them, showing them, pretend you're in a group of students and show them what that looks like when you're looking at the work and making sure you are aligning it with the rubric. Talk about the work, not the person. They have to see what that looks like, and then in order for them to be able to experience it on their own. Show them what it looks like to not judge. Don't say things like, oh, that's bad, or that's good, or good job. Rather, describe what you think is good about the work, and maybe what may be missing or what they could do better. Be very specific about your suggestions, and talk what you think, and then ask what you think the author might think, what the author may be thinking. So these are some great ground rules that you can use when you're out actually teaching students how to provide peer editing, peer feedback with each other. The next checklist that you'll see is for you as the teacher candidate or the teacher. What are the things that we as teachers do? We're so in the automatic, just doing our thing, just working and working in our classes, working with our groups, teaching, teaching, teaching. But we sometimes never take the time to reflect upon our practices. This checklist is a great tool that I would engage you or encourage you to use to see, how am I doing? What am I doing? Am I really providing quality academic feedback on a daily basis? Am I doing it weekly? How often am I doing it? And using this checklist to help guide you to determine, am I actually providing effective feedback? Or am I is the feedback that I'm providing, is it gold reference? Am I linking it to the actual standards? Am I linking it to the actual objectives for that day or the success criteria? Another thing, am I addressing correct rather than incorrect responses and building on changes from previous attempts or understandings? These are some tools, or this checklist is a tool that you can use to check for yourself as a professional to make sure that you are providing feedback that is not just constant or again, one of the things that what we will learn is that feedback is something that it's not always going to be the same all the time. Uh, this checklist is used to evaluate how frequently your feedback to students includes these features. For each item you will use to mark, are you doing it rarely? Are you doing it sometimes? Are you doing it often? So this is a good way for you to identify those areas of improvement that you can do to ensure that all of your students are receiving quality feedback, and how to plan to enhance the quality of feedback that you would want to continue providing. Um, Also looking at things like, is your feedback conversational? Are you doing more written feedback? Are you providing oral feedback? Do you see yourself having more time to provide written feedback, but when they're working in groups, you're not comfortable doing on the spot, timely, using that guide? Am I providing timely feedback so that students can immediately make those adjustments to whatever it is that you're giving them some comments about? Um, Another thing, it says right here, um, are you guiding? Is it ongoing learning? Are you making sure that the feedback that you're giving them is guiding them so that they can continue their learning and doing their own self-reflection? It does not threaten their self-esteem. I think the more you use this checklist to determine whether or not you are engaging students on a daily basis with academic feedback, quality academic feedback, whether it be oral or verbal, oral or written, this is a great tool to use. Here's an example. I'm going to dive into a quick example of a third grade ELA formative assessment. This is me, the teacher candidate, providing quality academic feedback to a student in third grade who responded to a prompt, a writing prompt, as you can see on the left here. And what I used the tool Quality Academic Feedback, the EDPR, seven characteristics or seven qualities of a quality academic feedback. And you'll see on the next screen how, after I read the exemplar response from the student, I made sure that I looked at the standards that the student was expected to make sure that they were completing and following, the directions, and I also looked at the actual rubric that they had to, or checklist that they had to complete and follow to ensure that their response covered all of those areas. So what I did was, again, I read through the sample. I used the quality academic feedback card as a guide, using the seven quality steps to make sure that I provided the feedback for that student. And then this final checklist, the feedback checklist, I put this in here as a reminder for you to make sure you go to this tool on a weekly basis to see, how often am I giving feedback. So I wanted to make sure that you understand that all of these documents are all connected. One is for the quality academic feedback, is on the spot. Use that chart to immediately provide feedback to help you give gold reference feedback, tangible and transparent feedback, actionable, making sure it's user friendly, it's timely, it's ongoing and consistent. And then finally, that last checklist is just something that you'd be aware of and make sure that you're following or checking to make sure you are doing different types of quality feedback on a daily basis. So looking at the responses after I read the student response to the ELA formative assessment, here are the examples of these are the things that I would have shared or would share with the students. For example, for tangible and transparent, I stated that the student used direct references to the text like pictures and magazines from another era, which shows you're grounding your ideas in what the author actually wrote. This helps make your thinking clear and visible. I'm going to move down to actionable, which here's one I stated. Here's one specific way to revise. Here I'm giving that student a quick, on the spot uh, feedback that they can go back and make a quick revisions immediately. I said, add more detail to your question. For example, instead of just asking, what does the author mean by treasure? You could ask, why does the author think some people find treasure in memories instead of money? And this opens up for a richer, deeper dialogue and conversation and more ideas to flow and give a deeper answer. I'm going to move into being consistent. I stated here your work aligns well. Notice I'm speaking about the work, not the personality of the student. I said your work aligns well with the rubric expectations for third grade critical writing. You've met the basic requirements and you are on your way to deeper and more insightful responses. So, again, I gave the student immediate feedback that was tangible, transparent, it was actionable, it was user friendly, it was timely, ongoing. And the ongoing is I want them to, not just with this particular document, as they move forward in their learning and other ELA responses or written text, be able to remind yourself to ask yourself, did I use a strong question that shows curiosity? Did I support my answer with clear evidence from the text? And that I fully explain my thinking using the vocabulary from that lesson. Again, this is ongoing, something that they can do now and continue in their future learnings. And then overall, I gave a summary of what they did very well and things that they can improve on. And again, I stated here, it's about the work, not about the personality of the student. And then finally, I have a fourth grade math formative assessment. This is the one where I'm showing you an example of how peer grouping, putting students together in teams or peers, working to provide feedback. I'm using the ground rules for peer editing chart to help students guide them as they provide support to one another in their little peer activity. Here's a math problem here in fourth grade. The student had to answer and then also provide a written response, as you can see here on the left. And then here is the ground rules for peer editing. And here's the responses. These are the things that I stated. Pretended two students were working together. These are some of the things that you will want to model what kinds of answers and responses you would like to see students engage in with each other. And that way they can turn in turn, when you release them to do this, they can do it on their own. So I said, hi, just like a fourth grader. I read your math response carefully, and I think you did a good job explaining how you use unit form to solve 2,000 divided by 4. And the student is telling another student, I like how you said 2,000 is the same as 20 hundredths. That was really smart and it shows you understand place value. Here you go. Telling the student, using the vocabulary words, place value. The more students engage and talk about that language, the more they'll understand it, remember it, and be able to use it in their own personal responses. Um, I'll jump down to number, talk about the work, not the person. Again, I'm basically telling the student how I'm glad how you explained 800 divided by 2. I said how they were super clear. Um, I also made them know that according to their rubric, if you go back to the compare the work with the rubric did ask that they show an illustration or and explain it. And what I suggested was that maybe next time trying to draw a rectangular array or area model, again, bringing the student back to remembering the rubric, looking at the rubric, aligning the work toward to the rubric. That would help you answer. You give an answer that's even stronger. Um, going back to what the rubric is expecting the students to accomplish. Um, and then I put here, great job. Keep going. Again, we're not supposed to just say great job, but again, you want to encourage. That's positive affirmation. You want to encourage your teammates. You want to encourage students to encourage each other. And it's okay to tell them they have a great job, but notice that I shared all this information related to the work, specifically to the work, and I gave them a great affirmation of good job. Okay. I'm also encouraging them to think through their processes. I'm asking them because I don't want to be the one as a peer just to give them all the responses. What suggest make specific suggestions. Ask the student, what do you think about the ideas I shared with you? Do you think adding a model would help someone else understand? Because not only are you telling the student or you giving the student some ideas, making sure that they align their answers to the rubric, the expectations of the assignment, but you want to check in and make sure that that student understands and that student is okay with that. That student might say, "Nah, I really didn't like that idea. I would prefer to do this." Well, that's an opportunity to have some conversation. So asking the student, the peer, do you think adding a model would help someone else understand your thinking? That way you guys can have some conversation and dig deeper into making sure, because maybe that student didn't see that part of the directions to add to do an illustration. So going back to allowing them to go back, review the directions, and make sure that they're following the actual assignment. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed learning about quality academic feedback.